I also saw that that's a way to scale. And I think the ultimate impact we have is at scale. And so that is ultimately what led me to believe that while nonprofits play a huge role in our society in terms of thought leadership and ideas, if you want to have the biggest impact, you want to have that impact at scale.
Alrighty, hello everyone, and welcome to the Dealmakers Show. So today we have a really amazing founder joining us. We're going to be talking about the building, the scaling, the financing, whether you're doing it in equity, whether you're doing it in debt. We're going to be talking about both. And then we're going to be talking about founder transformation, learning how to focus. We're going to be talking about also insurance products in fertility, and also how to think about market shifting, how to adapt to them as a founder too, and all of the above. So brace yourself for a very inspiring conversation today. And without further ado, let's welcome our guest today, Claire Tomkins. Welcome to the show.
Alejandro, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
So originally born in Oxford, England, but you moved to the US quite early, at 6 years old. So give us a walk through memory lane. How was life growing up for you?
I know, and no accent, although every once in a while someone thinks maybe I'm Canadian, which, you know, who doesn't want to be Canadian, so it's fine.
That's
right. But that's right. I moved here when I was young, 6 or 7 years old, and grew up in the US. And I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up between 2 states, Wisconsin and Illinois, for all of my childhood. And actually, something that still amazes my children, I kind of grew up in small communities and on a small farm. My parents were kind of eclectic collectors of animals. So we had Angora goats, we had llamas. I raised and trained horses. We had an assortment of different house pets, including bunnies. So it was really quite the menagerie. I do think those early years, though, growing up in a farm setting and getting up in those freezing Midwest winters at 5 or 6 in the morning to go and do chores and look after the animals, it did instill kind of a healthy work ethic from a young age.
What about problem solving? Where does the whole problem solving, come? Obviously you went and studied engineering, which kind of like shocked everyone in the family. So problem solving, how does problem solving come knocking to you?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's like problem solving just in the day to day when you have that many animals. one or more of them has always escaped, and so there was some of that. But I'd say in the problem solving, that's right. Everyone in my family was a bit surprised when I chose engineering as a major because I had a lot of passion around literature and science and other areas growing up. I think for me, though, that was an identity piece. At 18, was that I really wanted to solve problems in the world. And I think I knew I was a builder. I didn't know I was a quote unquote entrepreneur until much later in life. And I think that really that's because this generation growing up now is so much more familiar with the entrepreneurial pathway and the entrepreneurial journey and the idea of being an entrepreneur. And I don't even think I thought of that as a career. So I just knew I wanted to build things, and that led me to want to be and study engineering. And I did. I went to undergrad at University of Arizona, so Wildcats, and then was later lucky enough to move to the Bay Area to attend Stanford University.
Well, you did your PhD there, which was quite pivotal. But now, one of the things that is very interesting here is that obviously Stanford, everyone, building their own things, entrepreneurship, big time. For you went at it with nonprofits, obviously very different than the world that you're in now. So tell us about how did the whole nonprofit thing, come about? Because you also worked with very, big people there, whether it was Richard Branson or others, no?
That's right. So, I mean, a couple of things around that. And so first, I think I sort of sometimes a little bit tongue in cheek or jokingly say that I'm very much the daughter of, my father and the daughter of my mother, in the sense that my dad was kind of, I mean, not exactly, but kind of, I say, a hardcore capitalist, ran a big firm, private equity backed, and my mom was a social activist. And so I feel like I'm the mix between the two. So I enjoy building and being an entrepreneur, but I care a lot about impact. And so I think the impact piece is what came out in that early chapter of working on nonprofits, is I, definitely saw that as a way to have impact in the world. And it was an exciting time because it was just the kind of the forefront of scaling up renewable energy. I mean, this is 15 plus years ago. So it was really the beginning of saying, okay, we're going to start to scale. And I had that amazing opportunity, as you said, to work with, as part of Virgin Unite, Carbon War, and with Richard Branson, and then to do AEE with Matt James, Tom Steyer, a bunch of great folks, Anna O'Leary, Kate Gordon in San Francisco. But I will say that I ultimately switched over to working in the private sector and being an entrepreneur and building companies because I also saw that that's a way to scale. And I think the ultimate impact we have is at scale. And so that is ultimately what led me to believe that while nonprofits play a huge role in our society in terms of thought leadership and ideas, if you want to have the biggest impact, you want to have that impact at scale.
And why joining another company, like you did with Solar City versus starting your own? Obviously, now you're doing your own, but
why not just plunge in? I was very lucky to have some really great mentors when I, living here in Silicon Valley. And I think the advice I got, which I'm so glad I took, was, and at that time I didn't have also the idea fully formed in my head. So probably the most important thing about being an entrepreneur is you better love that idea because you are going to live and breathe that idea for many years. So at that precise moment, I didn't yet know what my company would be. And the mentorship I got was, go very specific, go into a hyper growth company. Because it's one of the unique things about living in Silicon Valley, maybe also New York or Tel Aviv, is you can go into hyper growth. And I just happened to have that opportunity, right? I had a big network in renewable energy, was very passionate about the space, and joining Solar City at the time made a world of sense. So it was a very formative 4 years, watching, Lyndon and Pete, Toby, and others scale that company, getting to work alongside them, going through the IPO, and then I, had an idea for a company. I thought it was a great idea, so I was going to start a DG company, and then ended up tearing up that business plan and starting Future Family, and that's kind of the beginning of this chapter.
Well, obviously that was over dinner. You were at that time pregnant with your daughter Natalie. And it was over a dinner with your husband where, the business plan that you had originally thought about, completely got scrapped and a new one, and a new idea. And obviously your company that you're pushing now was born. So what happened on that dinner?
Yeah, it's a very fateful dinner. I remember it well. We were in a small restaurant and having dinner and a glass of wine. And I obviously had said, oh my gosh, isn't this so crazy that we just went through this fertility journey that's changing our whole lives? And for me, it was really a difficult journey. And by the way, Natalie's now 10. And so at the beginning of this, people didn't talk about this so much. It wasn't necessarily all the celebrities and the media. That has changed super positively in the last several years. So for me, it was like a little hush hush. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've been on this roller coaster for several years of trying to get pregnant. With IVF, I finally was pregnant. It was amazing. And I said, my gosh, how crazy is it that we went through this journey and that there's no good financial solutions, very little innovation. Someone should really do something about this. I think that's what I said. Someone should do something about this. And, one thing led to another. And by the end of the dinner, it was like, I should do something about this.
So what happened next?
Yeah. So then, the idea for Future Family was, as you said, conceived that night, shall we say. That set me on the path of, start basically that very early seed stage journey. And it's really like everything you've ever seen in a Silicon Valley sitcom is me and a couple of, kind of friends, team members, literally in my home. We had a big room that was not yet occupied by the twins. And so we kind of set up camp and we started to build out the beginning of Future Family.
So I guess for the people that are listening to get it, what ended up being the business model of Future Family? How do you guys make money?
Yeah, so we are a consumer finance platform. And the things that we that I realized early, having a long background in consumer finance, and yeah, I was in solar, but believe it or not, there's a lot of similarities of doing a new asset class. Like when you do a new asset class, it's all about proving the performance, right? Why do people want to invest in your assets? It's because they perform well. So understood that really well from Solar City. The thesis was we need to finance American families. And it's now the fourth largest expense in America. It's mortgage, auto, education, and now family building and fertility. Fourth largest asset category. And so the business model and the idea was born out of let's build an asset class here. Let's finance American families and let's be better than anyone else. And that led to a lot of product iteration. We uniquely in healthcare, we manage multiple vendor payments. So when you get a loan for your car, pretty sure you only pay one dealership. When you get a loan in healthcare, you've got to pay the clinic, the pharmacy, other things. So we have a seamless payments platform, and we really are able to finance American families.
What was that moment like, Claire, where you were like, I think we may be into something here?
Yeah, it's a really great question. But I'd say one of the pivotal moments, and certainly a recognition of one of my deepest partnerships in building this business, was getting to meet with the team at Atalaya Capital and my longtime partner in this, James Intermont. And they understood the asset class immediately. We explained this is going to be a new asset class. This is what we want to build. And we did a very pioneering thing in the early days. We set up a $100 million facility still as a seed stage company right before we did our Series A. And so I think that was my aha moment when I realized people understand this asset.
Because all, in total, you guys have raised in debt and then also in equity. How much have you guys raised in total?
Yeah. So on the debt side, we just closed another $400 million fund. We announced that in the Wall Street Journal in April. So that brings the total capital up well above 500 million. And we've deployed 200 million, and then we've been selling assets on top of that, right? So a combination of raising and then just simply selling assets on the debt side. And then we've raised over 80 million in venture capital.
What has been the difference between both, whether you're raising debt or raising equity? What is the difference on raising both for a company like this?
Yeah, so different. Although, obviously beware as a founder, if you decide to do anything related to financing, you will always be raising capital because you're either raising equity or debt. There's never a not raising capital time. But, on the debt, we raise capital to finance families. So that in the structured finance world is really focused purely on the asset itself. So obviously they care about the company doing well and having a good corporate balance sheet and good financials. But the main focus has been on we're going to finance those assets, these consumer loans, and they're $25,000 lines on average. So this, again, fourth largest asset class. These are big lines that we write. These are not a couple $100 or a couple $1,000. So that raising that capital is very focused on the asset side. We do obviously, standard data tapes and looking at the performance of the loans and so forth. And then on the equity side, I think it's been a lot about in the early days, there was maybe some skepticism about fertility being a big TAM. Fertility, I don't know. I know a few people who've done it. I think now everyone has woken up, and certainly private equity is very active to the idea that, no, this is mainstream. This is 1 in 5 Americans. This might end up being 1 in 3 Americans. This might absolutely be your kids. And if you're me, you've already told your 10-year-old daughter that she's going to freeze her eggs at 18. And she already knows that. So this is, I think the TAM in this space is better understood, and that's helped with the equity fundraising, if that makes sense.
And on the equity fundraising over the 80 million plus that you guys raised, what was that journey like?
Yeah, the market, we've been around 8 years now, so I've been through a couple market cycles, and it's just drastically different. And timing is everything in life. And I would say in the good days of the market, and certainly 21 and 22, those were good years. The good years in the market, it's easy to raise capital if you have momentum in your business. I'd say very recently, obviously, there's been a lot of fallout for later stage companies because there's been, we all know what's happened in venture capital. I think last year, 70% less venture capital was raised, meaning LPs are on the sideline. And that impacts entrepreneurs because then fund managers are concerned about pricing, multiples, returns. So it's been a much harder fundraising environment in the last 18 months. And I also went through a really tough cycle early in the building of Future Family during the pandemic, where the pandemic had shut down our business. And I think I made, Alejandro, I kid you not, I think I made over 100 Zoom calls to raise about $10 million to get through the pandemic.
So I guess
I just remember sitting in that, my small home office at the time, just making call after call because we were distributing our product through the clinics, and fertility clinics closed down for almost 4 to 5 months. And during that time, Future Family had no net new revenue. So it was a kind of, everybody knew the business would come back, but investors usually don't like to invest ahead of a business coming back. They usually want to invest once the business is back. So that was a really tough chapter for us, is those 100 plus Zoom calls in 2020 and 2021.
So 100 plus and in the hundreds. Obviously, if we aggregate, throughout the whole journey, over these years, I guess, what would you say is probably the biggest misconception, around fundraising that you're like, wow, when you really encountered it?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception or most important thing psychologically for a founder is you have to try and view it as it being a two-way street. I really do say it's analogous to dating. And so in dating, it should be a fit on both sides and not something that ends up being forced. And yes, unfortunately, for the most part, you have to go on a lot of dates. But I think I always kind of jokingly say, if you don't have the right psychology around it, it feels like rejection, because it's like you go on a date and the first conversation is very friendly and they're like, let's have a second date and you're amazing. And then by the third date, they're like running for the door and you're like time and again, that cycle. But I have tried to frame it as you're really trying to find someone who aligns with you on the opportunity, the business model, how you want to execute. So it's kind of healthier to go into it with this mindset of not so much that I'm just trying to get everyone I talk to offer me money, but I just know that I'm going to find the fit, and I want to take meetings and kind of evaluate the investor as they're evaluating me.
And now, as we're talking about people too, no? Why is the focus ultimately on people and communication so important to you?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's changed the most for me, Alejandro, and I give a lot of credit here to this very amazing special program that's run by Leaders in Technology group, but was kind of, co-founded by Carol Robin, who used to run interpersonal dynamics at Stanford University. And as we've already disclosed, I'm an engineer by training, and I love people, relatively higher EQ. But that experience really changed my life. And I think it was what Carol said, which is the soft stuff is harder than the hard stuff, meaning it is really the people dynamics and the communications that in many ways can be harder for us. We might be very technically proficient, good at building Excel models, understand the business mechanics. But when you do a startup, the G-forces are real, and your ability to have real conversations, not just like, oh, I think we should do this and maybe we should pivot that direction and maybe this market, real conversations. How I feel, I'm scared, I'm worried, you're not delivering. Are we in alignment? Real conversations, I think, can make or break getting through a tough time. And it was certainly that experience of going through Lit and realizing that I was good at being positive. I was bad at conflict. I didn't know how to repair relationships after I got into a fight. There were a lot of things that I, even as a founder and CEO, really needed in my toolkit in order to kind of get further along.
So when you're on the other side of the mountain, right, and you always, unfortunately get the opportunity to be there as a founder. It's not a straight line. It's the ups, the downs. I guess when you're on the downs and when it comes to people, what has been your biggest lesson, about really embracing that soft, type of events, that tend to be the hardest ones?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, the biggest lesson has been around conflict. I think on some level, maybe we're all a little afraid of conflict.
Yeah.
And yet it's been the most essential, right? It's like, it's confronting, whether it's behavior, whether it's we just fundamentally disagree on something and we want to work this out. There may be a disagree or commit moment. I think that running away from conflict is not uncommon. It was certainly part of my story is, I could see the team is like kind of not motivated and I want them to follow me up this mountain. And I'm like, we're going up this mountain. we're not having real conflict. It's like, I need to open up and say, okay, I can read the body language. I sense what's going on. You guys don't want to do this. You don't believe in this. And the space, like, why not? Okay, we have conflict. And to make it okay to have conflict with the CEO, right? That's an art. What if people don't want to have conflict with you? You're going to fire them. I had one member of my team who was amazing, and he did conflict really well with me. And he used to tell everybody else in the team, he's like, look, we fight all the time and she hasn't fired me. It's been like several years, So it was sort of like making it okay to have conflict. You need to be able to do that in a healthy way. And you really need to empower your team to do that with you.
I love that. Now, tell us about insurance products in fertility. I know that you guys have quite a bit going on around that.
My favorite topic. I'm glad we finally got there. So this was a really crazy story. So I have an amazing partnership with the whole team at Munich Re Ventures. They're just amazing. Jacqueline Lesage, who founded the firm, Osh Kaplan, who sits on my board, Ian Sanders, who's the portfolio development, our head of portfolio development, that whole team, Veronica, who's on the team, amazing team, Ben, all the great people. We formed a partnership back in 2022, believing that we could build an insurance product for IVF. And I think, apart from the Munich Re team, I think everybody else thought we were crazy, that insurance is a very old industry. Think about Lloyd's of London. And while it is true, you can write an insurance policy for almost anything in the world, it's also, when they heard IVF, fertility, there were a lot of raised eyebrows. And so we spent, 18, almost 24 months building this product. We had the best actuarial firm in the global actuarial firm, and we brought in MS Re. And we built from the ground up a completely de novo financial product that is now nationwide IVF insurance for fertility. We call it Baby or Your Money Back. And I kid you not, you can buy a policy. If your IVF is not successful, it's covered.
Wow.
You just file an insurance claim. It's just like trip insurance, any form of insurance that you would buy, you can now buy this product. And if you don't get a baby, we will send you your money back.
Well, I think that's probably
a personal passion project of mine. I mean, I dreamt of this product for years. So you think about how founders get obsessed. I was obsessed about this for years.
Well, I think that this is amazing because for the people that are listening that maybe they're not so familiar, I mean, the costs of fertility are it's pretty costly, right? I mean, what's the average cost that
25K a cycle? So we're writing people insurance policies for $40,000 or $50,000, and I can tell you,
wow,
growing up in the Midwest, I can tell you, it's for all of us, it's a really big financial exposure to say, I'm going to do 2 rounds of IVF. It might cost me $40,000 or $50,000, and if it doesn't work, what happens? So we, the Munich Re team understood, the Munich Re Ventures team understood this MRV from the beginning. It was like, this is insurable risk. The success rates have gotten better. We could write a policy here. But furthermore, how do we help more Americans start their family? And my co-founder on the product, Jason Sellers, always says, he's like, I have a great relationship with my wife, and I'm in it because I want to reduce marital conflict. I do not want people to fight about having IVF because one person wants IVF and wants a baby, and the other person's like, woo, it's financial Armageddon. So we have all been very passionate about this product, and we launched Baby or Your Money Back on February 19th of this year. And the reason I know that date by heart is because we launched that product on my daughter's 10th birthday.
Wow. What a big deal. What a big deal. Now, let's talk about, since we're talking about years here, I want to talk about going to sleep tonight. Claire, let's say you go to sleep tonight and you wake up in a world where the vision of the company is fully realized. What does that world look like?
I do sometimes go to that world. So I think for me, as we talked about this being kind of a new asset class and what it takes to pioneer, a new asset class, I think of it a lot that way. I think of it like we just take for granted now that if you're going to buy a house, you're going to get a mortgage. And if you're going to buy a car, you're going to take an auto loan. And if you're going to go to a great college so you can do great things in your life, you're going to take an education loan. And I think of it that way, that I wake up believing that everyone will just be like, oh yeah, of course, I'm ready to have a family. So I'm getting a financing plan or a loan to start my family, and I'm getting a baby or your money back guarantee. And that becomes the new norm. Like, it's just not a stressful experience financially, and hopefully less so emotionally, to start your family in this country. So that is the world I wake up in.
That's amazing. Now, let's say I put you into a time machine, Claire, and I bring you back in time. I'm going to bring you back to that dinner where you were having a chat, with your husband. And let's say I give you the opportunity of being able to show up at that dinner and being able to sit down next to your younger self, next to your husband, and you're able to give that younger self one piece of advice before launching a business. What would that be and why, given what you know now?
Yeah. Well, I think I'm going to tie it. It's a great question, by the way. And, there's obviously a big need in Silicon Valley and other places to sort of always be saying, like, you're crushing it and things are going well. I just think no founder looks back and doesn't think they would do some things differently, of course. And so I think, probably I'm going to go back to what I had shared earlier and say, I just think that the most profound piece of the journey has been around building and having authentic relationships, being able, frankly, to manage founder mode. Because, now there's been a lot of chat around, how amazing it is to be in founder mode. There's a time and a place, but in founder mode, you also mow over a lot of people. So there's like a time and a place for it. And so I think that would have been the thing I would have whispered in my ear, would have been like, focus on that, not just the product, not just the scale. You have this drive and this fire inside of you, but also focus on the team, the communication, unleashing everybody else's power around you.
I love that. Claire, for the people that are listening, that would love to reach out, say hi, learn more, what's the best way for them to do so?
Amazing. We'd love to hear from all of you. And also, if you're going through IVF, please make sure you get an insurance policy, baby or money back. But you can visit the company at futurefamily.com. You can also visit insuremyivf.com to go directly to the application for the baby or money back guarantee. And you can find me on email at claire@futurefamily.com or follow along on our various social channels. But Alejandro, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Claire. It has been an absolute honor to have you with us.